Hollywood, California. Don't know why I'm looking over to my shoulder. That's right. That's Hollywood right outside right there. With me is, you know him as the czar of the virtual background, the one and only Pro GK Academy, Omar Zini. And the reason I started with Omar right there is because we have two Jersey legends on the air right now at the exact same time. That's right. Two former U.S. women's national team goalkeepers at the same time. That may be no, it's not the first, because we had Jane Campbell on with Saskia, so that has happened before. But anyway, I've totally botched that. We've got the one and only Jill Loyden joining Saskia Weber from TKI. Jill, what is up? This is awesome.
I didn't even get an intro. See, that's how big he's like joining Saskia. I didn't even get an intro. Normally I
think if people don't know who you are by now, Saskia. Okay, co-owner, Angel City FC, UCLA goalkeeper coach, World Cup winner.
I didn't need all that.
Princeton high school legend.
There you go.
Yeah.
That juggernaut. That's cool.
Jill, we're really excited to have you on. Honestly, I mean, we, as you know, we always rave about TKI on the show. We love all the sessions that you guys are doing out there. Maybe for some of the people out there who are tuning into the stream who might not be familiar with TKI, can you kind of give just kind of a layout of what you guys have been up to lately with the new space and all the videos you've been putting up, the podcast, all that?
Yeah, so I started the Keeper Institute in 2013 when I was still playing, because I'm from South Jersey. It's a difference. Anything above Cherry Hill, South, that's North Jersey.
I'm never going to hear the end of this right now. South Jersey. Anything above Cherry Hill, she is correct.
Yep.
Which means you should be a Philly fan.
I am a Philly fan.
See? What I tell you, Mike? He asked me before you got on.
Okay.
Yeah, Philly through and through. But I'm from South Jersey, and when I was growing up, there was no goalkeeper coaching in my area, and I didn't have my first goalkeeper coach until I got to college. And once I did, my career kind of took off, and so I attribute it all back to someone who encouraged me, inspired me, and gave me tools to succeed. And so when I was still playing, I really wanted to help change the landscape of South Jersey soccer, and more specifically goalkeeping. So started the Keeper Institute. We hop from field to field. I was using the lawnmower at the nearby rec fields to train goalkeepers, and it's a grind. And I ultimately knew I wanted our own space, a place that we would call home, a place that we could come together as a team and meet and have do video analysis and do strength and conditioning all in one place. And so after 2 years of looking, we found a space. We moved there. We were there for 4 years, and now we've opened up another facility that's double the size, where we have classrooms and we have locker rooms, which is fantastic, and a strength and conditioning and a turf. And we train, I don't know, a couple hundred, between 200 and 300 goalkeepers a year at our facility and outside, of course. But we love it, and we have continuing to grow our team of goalkeeper coaches and different various programs through our internships. And I think we have 13 or 14 coaches on staff with us right now, and we enjoy developing and improving every day. And that's helping our players to improve, but that's also improving us as coaches. So we have our own little niche over here in South Jersey.
Sweet. So if I move back, I have a job.
Yeah, exactly.
And I apply for a job.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, one of the things I really love about you guys is that not only do you guys have, obviously you're empowering a lot of young goalkeepers in regards to, working there as interns and then on becoming staff members and all of that, but you also have, pros such as NWSL players coming out in the off season and training there. And then all of the young goalkeepers really get to see what it really takes to play at that level, Jill. And I absolutely love the fact that there's that vertical integration of TKI, younger keepers all the way up to interns, all the way up to staff, and then the pros come back and then they give back too.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you guys have had Caitlin Sheridan on. I mean, I'm super biased, but I think right now she is one of the top 5 goalkeepers in the world. And when our kids come and they see her play and they see her train, and she's in there all the time. She's a junkie. She's a goalkeeper junkie and soccer junkie. She's in there training, and the kids love asking her questions. They love watching her play. We use clips of her when we show kids, because we're like, hey, look, you have a connection to this person, and they're able to do it, and ask questions and see how they do it and make it your own. And so it's great. It's great role models for our kids, both girls and boys, by the way.
Yeah, that's a a fallacy that a lot of people are under this impression, and they go, oh, Jill Loyden, TKI, it's a women's goalkeeper program, and you kind of have to be like, no, it's a goalkeeper program. It's not a gender-based goalkeeper program.
Don't get me started. I was on a phone call the other day. I was on a phone call the other day with a mom, and she was like, oh, I'm new, and can you tell me about your programs? And I'm telling her, and I'm like, yeah, we have a highly educated staff. We have professionals who've played, for several years internationally and domestically, and been to World Cups, Olympics. And she's like, well, do you have any males? And I was like, I just listed off all those amazing things that our staff has done, and you want to know if we have any males. And it irks me, because I'm like, I can kick the ball just as hard, and I can coach just as well as any male, it doesn't matter. But yeah, we're not just for females. We work with several males, and we have males on staff too. But it's a collaboration, which I really appreciate.
Don't even get me started. Mike knows how I feel. I'm like, oh, men can coach women, but God forbid if women coach men. Forget about it. I'm like, last time I checked, we won 4 World Cups. So I'm pretty sure I'm not understanding why can't a woman be the coach of the men's national team? Maybe you'll qualify. I'm like, it's the same sport, Don't get me started. You know how pissed off I get about that.
Omar, you want to chime in on that, or you want to just leave that alone? Just let that be.
No, I mean, we've even seen with like Becky Hammond for the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, she's like one of the first highly regarded female assistant coaches, and it was against the norm, and now it's becoming a norm in different places. So I mean, I think some people just need to get used to that fact that that's the truth. It hasn't happened in the past, but it's the truth now, and like people need to understand that like the respect across the board should be given. And I feel like that. I think that sometimes you need people like TKI and people who have. I mean, I've watched all you guys' stuff for so long, so I mean, I probably am biased as well. But anybody who hasn't seen it, go watch their stuff. I learned a lot of stuff, even the stuff that you guys post about like strength and conditioning. I'll look at that and like strengthening the core, certain things, and I'll listen to it. And I'm like, oh my god, I've never thought about that. I've never researched it, but now that I got that information, it's important. So that's what it is. You guys are like creating a new norm, and I feel like in a year or two, there's gonna be a lot more of those kind of academies out there.
I have to give a shout out really quick though to Kim Wyatt, because the coach at NYU for the men's team. So she's U.S. national team goalkeeper, and she's so
that's cool.
Breaking ceilings, which is ridiculous to have to say.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm leaving myself out of this conversation because I don't feel like I really deserve to be in it. But in regards to the whole breaking glass ceilings thing, I wish that wasn't even have to be part of a conversation. People would just kind of judge people based on their merits, of their ability, and all that stuff. And I hope that we're moving in that direction. So speaking of that, let's kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this session. Shout out to John Bush for giving me that terminology right there. Today's topic, guys, is going to be kind of putting complex sessions or compound sessions together. One of the things I love about TKI, Jill, is that you guys have an ability to, when you have big numbers or a lack of resources or whatever, space-wise, you're able to find ways to develop activities that force all the goalkeepers to be involved and invested in possession, out of possession. So it's not just like, sedentary servers doing training in isolation with a goalkeeper who's quote unquote training, but it's more game-like scenario. So kind of maybe for some of the parents out there that don't know what we're talking about, can you kind of explain what a compound session is in your opinion?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, we don't really refer to it as that when we're training at TKI. We kind of just refer to it as training, but I think I understand what you're saying is like, getting everyone kind of, integrated into the session. So we do 1 goalkeeper coach to 6 kids. So there's 7 of us potentially on the field. And so there's 1 coach and 6 players, but we kind of think of it as 7 co-coaches, and we all help each other, and we're all serving. And we don't rely just on the head coach to serve. We want everyone to be active the entire time. There's benefits of watching other people. There's benefits of serving and challenging, and there's a competitive fire that you also get. But it also helps us to make our training a little bit more game realistic. So I think what we try to do is basically take everyone's excuse and just show a way that you can do anything that you want to do. So if you have a limited field space, which we do, and we understand that, and we are working on a solution, a long-term solution outdoors that we will call our own. But right now we are limited sometimes with the weather and the conditions and coronavirus shutting down fields. So, but we are trying to be as creative as possible and to not let an excuse get in our way of development. And I think the more time that we can spend planning, which is probably where we spend our most time, is planning for sessions, then I think that we can maximize development in the hour and a half to 2 hours we get with our kids per week.
Yeah. Did you hear that, Omar? No excuses. No excuses on field space, resources, or anything like that for you.
I think we all try to make it work. I mean, even the field that I'm on now is not great. So some of the sessions that I want to do in terms of like, passing the ball across the 18, some of the kids can't receive a ball on a turf field, let alone the field that I'm on now. So I've had to scrap a lot of the stuff that I want to do. But like you said, just kind of make it work, and you kind of spend a lot of time thinking about what could potentially go wrong, and all the factors that you have, whether it's the goalkeeper's ability, whether it's the field, weather, whatever it is, you game plan that, and then from there your session plan should again be tailored around what the variables that you might have to face.
Yeah, I think it's also important to note that, like, I think sometimes people look at their obstacle and their hurdle as something that can impede development, where I'm like, wow, that's an opportunity to grow development even quicker. So like, you guys know Tim Dittmer, he told me this about this book, and it's called like the gold mine effect or something. And there's these ping pong players from this certain part of the world that are just like dominating. And the reason why was because they trained in a garage, and the table was smaller than the like, I don't know, the standard table. So their reactions had to be so much quicker. And so there you would think, oh, well, we're not playing on a regulation size table, that's going to impede my development. But actually it took their development and maximized it and made them way better with what they thought would hold them back. So we kind of have that mindset too.
Yeah. Saskia, I want to ask you this because obviously, Jill, you were bringing up the whole idea of planning and how important that is. With the limitations of COVID now, how much more important has planning become for you to make sure that you've got sessions that have multiple scenarios, that it's not all over the place, and that there's an actual specific goal for the session?
Well, I mean, I think that something good can come from anything. So as a team, we really dove deep into changing our curriculum and becoming more teachers. So instead of thinking ourselves as coaches, we're thinking more of ourselves as teachers, and adopting some of the teaching tactics that teachers actually use in the classroom. And part of that is being laser focused on training, asking certain questions, the way you speak to kids in a training session where you're checking for understanding, things like that. So we kind of restructured the way that we do our curriculum. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, please do. Hold on, let me.
Right.
I'm an idiot. I didn't do the co-host thing yet. Let me do that here. Oh man. Oh.
All right.
I'm making everybody a co-host. There we go.
There we go.
Saskia, you can be a co-host too.
So
Boom.
this is kind of how we structure our sessions now. So we'll have our little quick tactics set up, and then the instructions on the side, and every single practice. So this is the third practice in our session. We always have 2 intended outcomes from every single session. So our intended outcomes for this week, we're identifying pressure, space, and options, and retaining our set shape. So we're doing scenarios where it was close range shot stopping, and we're trying to get our kids to stay in that shape without popping out and like bracing themselves to be hit. And then in order to simplify training and to pick up on some really important cues, we always write typical errors. So these are some things that are going to stop our kids from being successful. So when scanning, which is what we think is the most important part of in possession, when they're not looking early enough to look for the pressure, to look for where they can take their touch in the space or play into space options. Then we always have questions. These are questions that we want to probe to check for understanding. So if a goalkeeper is taking a touch underneath their body and they get closed down on, they get stripped, maybe the question is, well, where is the space? It's not, well, why did you get stripped? It's where's the space? Because then you can move into that space. How can we exploit the space to our advantage? So we always have a list of questions, and then sometimes the session doesn't go as planned and you need to take a step back. So we always have a few regressions that you can add or ways to change the training to make it simpler for that group. And then we always have a way that you can progress it. So that would be our third practice right there. This is our second practice. And I'll show you guys what this training film looks like. And this is our first practice. And again, we only have 2 intended outcomes for every single training session. So I don't know about you guys, but when I first started coaching, like I would just go out and I would set up my session and I would execute my session, and whatever the kid got out of that is what they got out of it. So, you know, I would give feedback from anything from set shape to first touch to diving shape, anything, whatever I saw, I just like word vomit it all over them. And when kids, and when kids left, their heads were spinning and they didn't have any clear takeaways, like 0 takeaways. They're like, I'm just so overloaded. And I can kind of understand that. Like, I don't know how you felt, Saskia, but my first training session with the national team, or like my first month, I felt like my head was spinning the entire time because it was just, it was too fast and my head couldn't think about all these things. So 2 outcomes and that's it. And all of our questions and all of our feedback are targeted to those 2 intended outcomes. So these were our practice plans. And then here's a little bit of like what that might look like.
By the way, Jill, you're just going to talk for the next hour. Omar, Saskia, and I, we can be just quiet and literally watch. This is awesome. This is so.
Sorry.
No. I didn't mean that like in a derogatory way. I mean, like I want to take screenshots here and stuff because like.
I'll send you all this.
Oh my God.
I'm like, you're the most organized guest we've ever had. I'm just
wow.
I'm like sitting here like, she's like, can I take over your screen?
Sorry.
Here we go. I'm like, I mean, Franz Hook wouldn't even say anything right now.
I'm going to record you saying that I'm organized because my wife thinks that I'm like literally the most unorganized human. So this is good. Actually, I'll show you this is our second practice. So we did a little in possession thing first, and then we went straight into handling and did some combinations with close range shot stopping. And the only feedback that we were giving was feedback that would be pertaining to their shape in these close range scenarios.
In regards to both positive and negative on the shape, or are you focusing just, okay.
No, we would ask positive questions. We would ask negative questions. We would say, well, what did you see? Why did you make that decision? What would you do different? When is it hard? That's a really good question that we ask. When is it hard? So that was our second practice. This is something that we'd end on. So we were looking to find through passes. That's something that we've really been focusing on with Kaylin is, can we find those through passes? Because we think that they will lead to final third entries more often. And then retaining her set shape because she pops out of her shape a lot for those close range reactions. So that's what our session kind of looks like, a little snapshot.
Look at me, I'm like, how old's Kaylin? I'm not allowed to do that technically. I'm like, how old's that kid?
But the cool thing about something that happened in coronavirus is Zoom. Like I didn't know what Zoom was before coronavirus, right? So we've really taken that and we've tried to run with it and use it to our benefit. So we meet every Sunday. Our goalkeepers meet every Sunday, and we do a presentation with them every Sunday. So recap, what's one of the most important things that you need to do when your team has the ball? And they've already learned this. So we're trying to get them to recall what they've learned, because you guys know, you teach one thing, and then by the time they come back next week, they've already forgotten that. So we have to recap, and we ask them midweek and then again on Sunday, what have you learned, or what did you learn last week essentially? And we wanted them to come up with the idea of scanning. Scanning for pressure is the most important, spaces, options. And then this week we give new information. This week we're gonna scan for pressure and spaces, because last week it was simple, just scan for your options. And then we give little clips from different leagues around the world. So some Premier League stuff, some
taking
NWSL
notes here, Omar?
But we give them just different ways to basically solve pressure. Then we go back, what was the most important aspect of shot stopping, set shape, and then we give some different scenarios again to help them recall. And we do different things where we're on Zoom and we do, all right, Mike, tell me one thing that you learned last week. And Saskia, how did that impact you on set shape? And Omar, how might your set shape might be different than Saskia's set shape? Or how might you handle that different in this scenario? And we get them to constantly, we get them to constantly be thinking.
I'm sorry, I had to, Omar.
But yeah, the more we can get them to think about the position and think about their decisions and take ownership of their actions, we think the better off they're going to be. So they come into TKI, they know exactly what we're working on. They come to the whiteboard. There's 2 arrival questions that they have to think about during their warm-up. After their warm-up, we go over those arrival questions. We go over the session on the whiteboard. And then in the middle of training, we do what's called a halftime huddle. So just like in the game, you have your game plan in the beginning of your game. You've got a halftime. We've got a halftime huddle. The kids get together. They talk about what went well, what was difficult, how can we be better moving forward. And at the end of training, we do what's called a 3-2-1 debrief. There's 3 questions with at least 2 people, and then they get to go home. And that's kind of how we run our sessions.
Jill, I have a question. How organized is Maria if she considers you disorganized? Like straight up, like, I mean, come on, like, we're all just looking here. We're like, man, I think I've got.
I'm like, God, I really gotta step my game up right now. I'm like, oh.
I mean, Maria has like a spreadsheet on like when's the last time I went to the dentist. So I mean, she's super organized.
Oh, you know, I have a question about this right here. Omar, obviously you do a lot of training videos and on all that sort of a thing online. I'm sure pretty people are familiar with that in regards to the breakdowns and all that. Is this something that you think that like a lot more people need to focus on when they're putting on a session on video or anything like that, is showing the errors that could potentially happen as well too, and also the positives that they're going to get out of this session when they're posting something, so that it doesn't just come across as like, here's my session, here's X to Y, and you go ahead and you try it?
I would say 100% yes, but like you've seen with this, that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and that shows you the difference between the fakers and the real people who actually are the ones who are making things happen. And even just watching like Jill break everything down, and from a coach's perspective and from a goalkeeper's perspective, you're telling me that I broke down hours and hours of YouTube videos when I was 13 years old, and I could have just gone to TKI myself and had this given to me. I would have been a cooler kid in school. I would have gone to more parties. I would have done a lot more cooler things. And I'm just sitting at home trying to download my own YouTube clips and watching games that, like, there's no DVR, so I have to wake up at 5 a.m. to watch these games. Oh my God. So yes, to answer your question, yes. But like, again, you see how organized you have to be, and how much, not I'll say how much soccer you have to watch, but like to catch clips that not justify your sessions, but that show the reasonings behind your sessions. And like, if you want to show people the reasonings, this is why I did it, this is where I, kind of drew the inspiration from, that takes hours. Like I watch YouTube, USL clips every Sunday night, MLS clips every Sunday night. And I have like a whole list of YouTube notes of like, okay, this is where the block save was used. This is where a bottom hand save was used. This is when the goalkeeper shouldn't have used the bottom hand. He should have done this. So I have all those notes. But again, having a coach after hours come to the session with all this information prior and show me a picture of what I'm going to do, that's priceless. And I feel like that's to the highest order of goalkeeping right there.
Yeah.
Can I show you guys one more thing on my computer?
Oh my God, yes.
Yes, we can be here all day. Trust me.
I'm just chilling. I'm just chilling.
So, so I do believe that session design is so important, and I firmly believe that you should create sessions that are as game specific and game realistic as possible. And technical is important, don't get me wrong, and there are times and places for just working on like technique after technique. But I think the easiest thing ever is to watch the game and then to say, all right, here's a great scenario, and I see this recurring. So let's try to just set this up based on what I see. So what I do is I have Y Scout, And so I download like different training or different game films, and then I categorize them all into these different folders. And then, so like if you wanted to look at distribution, all of these clips are like, all right, how can I attract pressure? Working on first touch, angle of support, well, backpedal to create more time and space. So anytime that I'm like, all right, I see that our students really need to work on solving pressure that's coming from one side because they need to have a different body shape or receive the ball on their back foot or take a touch into space, we just shoot this into our Google Drive, and they can take a look at it during the week or whenever they have time on their own accord. But it's really simple and easy to do this kind of stuff, and it will benefit your training so much more, because when you can laser pinpoint one thing that you want to work on or two things you want to work on, you get so much more accomplished. Like I kind of imagine it to be like when you go hunting, if you shoot for 5 birds, you're going to miss all 5. But if you just laser pinpoint on one, you've got a better chance to make it happen. So we're really specific because we want to give our kids as many options as possible, but we try one thing at a time until they can understand it and like apply it, and then we move forward. So it can't be just like, oh, I tried to work on taking my touch into space, and I taught that last week, they should know that, so I'm going to move on. We have to check for understanding to see if they actually do know that and if they can apply it.
See, that's a question that I have for you, Jill, and I don't know if anybody else is on the same page in regards to this. Is what do you do when, for a lack of a better term, the kids don't do their homework? And like I know that you saw in your session plans that you had like ways to make adjustments, based on this isn't here yet or this isn't there yet. But what do you have is there's one kid that's just not on the same page as the others. And then also, one of the situations that a lot of coaches come into a lot of times into play, especially in the youth game, is so-and-so hasn't been there for 6 weeks and now they're there. And now we've done 6 weeks of curriculum buildup, and now so-and-so's thrown into this scenario, and it's making it difficult for me to get the quality that I want out of the session.
Yeah, I do think that is a great question. I think I don't really run into that problem too much because mostly our kids come, maybe miss a session here or there, but we actually record all our Zooms and put them in Google Drive so they can see them even if they can't be there. So most of our kids do watch, simply because when they come to training, they don't want to be called on and not know the answer. And most of our kids are there because they want to be there. It's not like club soccer where your parents sign them up and they have to go. They actually choose to get extra training. So it's to their benefit to know what we're doing. But if there is a student that's struggling, like let's say one of our kids can't get set shape, then I have to gear my questions toward that, because that would be a building block for us. Like set shape is super important. And scanning would be a building block for us. So if they can't get those things down, we have interns at our training session. So the intern might take that goalkeeper aside and help them apart from the group so that they can integrate them back into the group, which is a good way. And if not, there's really good ways, I think, with saying to your other students, like, hey, maybe Cole needs some help with his set shape. So in between repetitions, can you give him some guidance on that? Can you say, hey, like, let's watch Mike and watch his set shape. Look at his feet inside shoulder width apart. And so therefore you're building the leadership component of maybe your more advanced students. And you're also like manipulating the session to like A, get the result that you know that your goalkeepers need, but B, to advance some of the other goalkeepers' areas of their game that aren't necessarily just like shot stopping.
Yeah. I mean, I love that whole, and that's something that we've spoken about on the show. Saskia, I know you've always been really big about this type of, that mentorship, that leadership of the older goalkeepers in an academy to really help out those younger ones. And I think that's, you're developing. I've always been the believer in, like, you want to develop coaches. It's like you want to develop people that understand the game to the point that you can start hiring them to work for you. Not everybody's going to want to be a coach, but at least to start understanding why something's being done and how to convey it to somebody. Right.
I mean, to be able to bring that out in a youth player and stuff to see, then they're looking at the other players. They're identifying the mistakes that they're making and how to adjust them. And that just comes into their own play in itself. Like, to watch, I always make our keepers watch. I'm like, you know, you're not in the drill, you're standing here, you're watching. Watch what Lauren's doing right. Watch what Hannah's doing right. Watch what somebody's doing wrong. Like, do you see it? Do you see, you know, how their body weight was? Do you see this? Like, learn from that. And then at the same time, be able to self-coach yourself. And yeah, mentor. And the one thing I love about all our keepers at UCLA is they'll talk to each other. They'll be like, hey, you know, you were still moving when you were coming for that. You didn't get set early enough and stuff. And it's not like an ego thing. And I'm like, because I won't have that. I'm like, you guys have to be able to work together. You have to be able to communicate together and talk and help lift each other and help grow as a group. And they do. And I love it. Sometimes I just sit back and I'm just like, all right, she's right, you know. Yeah. And they take it and then yes, that evolves into coaches. But to be able at this age to self-coach is huge. I will turn and say, what happened? You tell me. I can tell you. You tell me. And if they're right, yeah, you're absolutely right. Don't do it again. But if you're not, like, if you're not sure what happened, then we'll break it down and we'll go over it. That's just a huge part of education as a goalkeeper, period.
I just think it's such a vital component that allowing the goalkeeper to, and Jill, one thing that you've brought up that really I love is that whole empowerment element is in that you're empowering the goalkeeper to learn how to figure this out on their own.
Absolutely.
You know, and that
I sat back today at practice and I just sat back and we were doing a shooting drill and I always stand behind the goal, center behind the goal. I'm like, are they going to figure out why they keep getting scored on? And I literally sat back and I was just like, all right, are they going to figure it out? Are these two are they going to make the adjustment? Because the adjustment to me was obvious, you know, and you know, we took a break and they hadn't. I'm like, have you guys figured this out yet? Why? What's your adjustment that you have to make? And it was a positioning adjustment. They were too close to their line in the shooting drill. That was too tight in the box. And I'm just like, what are you doing? The ball's like 10 yards away from you. Why are you on your line? You know, but they hadn't, like, it didn't click. And so, and the next group, because we have to split groups, next group, it didn't click. They started off like that, but then they made the adjustment themselves. And so, like, yes, I sit back and see if they're going at this level, at UCLA level. Yes, I'm going to see if they can be able to identify that and adjust it.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes why session design is so important, but there's so many other really important factors of training. So, like, you have your session, but then how do you coach your session? Because, like you're saying, language is so important. Like, I'll ask my kids, experiment with your positioning because it's a little off, right? Experiment with it. You try to set somewhere different than you did in the last repetition. I try not to say you should do this.
No.
Yeah, but use the word you could. You know, kids ask, should I do that? And I'm like, well, you could. That's one solution. And there's plenty of different solutions.
Yeah, and we've always talked about that. It's a gray area and each keeper's going to be different. Like, he's going to set differently than Lauren's going to set and stuff. And how to handle a certain situation depends on the keeper that it is. But I say the same thing. And whether it's, you know, let's extend your range here. Let's try some stuff, you know, like, we can be comfortable in practice and we can do what's safe to us, but this is practice. Like, you know, how do we know how much better we can get or how much further we can go on a cross or you know, on a slided ball or something if we don't try? You know, you can just keep dropping in and getting blown into the back of the net, or you can try you know, let's see your range. It's going to be different for everybody.
By the way,
verbiage is incredibly important.
I want all the viewers right now to know that Omar is still here. He's been here. He's been here this entire time, just listening intently. This is some of the most quiet I've seen Omar in a while, and he's not watching the Premier League game.
Since the Franz Hook episode.
The Franz Hook one.
I talk too much. No, I just feel like there's enough high quality information that's being let out that I need to just sit back and listen, because I have a different, system of what I do things. I get kids once, twice a week at most. So continuation is very difficult for me. So I get a lot of kids who, want to work on specific things. So I don't have the carryover every single week. They'll see me one week, they'll go on vacation with their families, whatever. So then by the time I come back, now we're just fine tuning their technique versus actually building off something. So I know I want to create an academy at some point and build a facility here in California at some point. So just listening to these little tidbits from Jill and of course Oscar too is just like getting those pieces that I can piece together at some point.
Yeah. I want to bring this up right now because, one of the things, Jill, is obviously it's so profound and it's so advanced what you've put together in regards to your curriculum and how you have your sessions. I want a lot of people still to understand out there that just a complex or a compound activities does not necessarily mean difficult. It's still about, like, my concern is that somebody like an Omar type, not necessarily Omar, will take that and go, cool, I'm going to do that. And then they try to do that and they try to implement that. And they're like, well, this doesn't look like what I'm seeing at TKI. What am I doing wrong? So kind of what advice do you give to those types of, coaches who are seeing your content and they're overcomplicating what they're seeing?
Yeah, I think knowing your why is going to be the most important thing of like, why are you doing that? And we've designed our curriculum based off of what we think it will take for goalkeepers to develop all different aspects of their game. So, I mean, I could give you guys some more slides, but we have like what we think embodies the modern day goalkeeper, all the attributes, and that's how we design our sessions. And so, we believe that goalkeepers have to be pressure resistant and to be able to solve pressure different ways. So, all right, that's what it looks like at the top. So these are the ways I'm going to build that. And I'm going to first start with the foundations, obviously, the technique of passing. And then I'm going to talk about scanning. And that is what we've developed. We've developed our methods, our ideas of what it's going to take. And we've basically broken down some complex, rocket science to ABCs. And that's essentially how we build our sessions. So, but unless you know why you're doing what you're doing, or what you want to get out of the session, you're going to miss your target every time. So yeah, you can absolutely take our curriculum and you can use it yourself. And we want to help people, and that's why we post it. But I would just challenge people to know what your target is, what do you want to get out of sessions, and why are you doing it? And there's some techniques out there that I probably would never coach because I don't think that it really applies to the game, and so we don't. And that's my opinion, but you have your opinion, and I really challenge you to find your identity as a coach, and base it in what goalkeepers are seeing week to week.
Yeah, and it's I have the pleasure of seeing them in a game situation every day. Like, and so that's different, I have my session, and then we have, half the time it's small sided or whatever it is right now with Corona and stuff like that. So I can see them. And if they're applying this into more of a game situation with field players and everything like that, and then build kind of my sessions have from the beginning of training to now have kind of curtailed into to what each individual is dealing with, because they're four. So what each individual is dealing with, but also making a session that can focus on each thing for each person and at the same time. And again, it's not overblown. It's not, hey, you need to do this, you need to focus on this. It's literally one thing to two things for each keeper right now. And it's just like, yes, they're at the highest level, but it's still like, you aren't getting set on time. You're not going to answer the ball. Like, it's literally, and then it's making that session so it kind of works for everybody. And then going again and seeing how it applies into a game-like situation. Because I can sit there and do sessions all day long, but if they're not taking that knowledge and it's not translating into a game situation, then there's a disconnect. And I'm like, great, you're doing it fine when we're doing a session, when it's just goalkeepers and stuff like that. But once we get into game like situations and Mia's coming at you and you're just not doing it now, why? Where's the disconnect? And
I have a question about that, Jill, because obviously, you're running an independent, program, with a curriculum on its own away from.
No, but I'm saying that's a pleasure it's a gift that I have in this situation.
No, I know. I'm talking about, but in Jill's situation where like she doesn't have a field players from another team, and I don't know if you guys ever do that, if you ever bring in youth clubs to train with your goalkeepers or whatever, but do you ever, watch the tape of their youth games and see like, oh, this isn't really resonating. What you're doing here at the academy is not being translated onto the field right there. And how do you help a goalkeeper with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question and a hurdle that we face. So kids that have come in and maybe in our programs are individuals, we have that issue. But we can't go to everyone's game every week. So we ask them to bring us film. So just today, I had a student come to training, did an individual in a small group with some of our other coaches. And then she had sent me like 15 clips from her game. So her mom literally put her phone on and record it. It wasn't great quality, but we were able to look at it and she's able to make some adjustments. So that's our small groups and our individuals, but we do work with a club that's in the GA. So we work with their goalkeepers and we see them twice a week. We do the Zoom calls with them. So really we have 3 touch points with them per week. And then we do IDPs with them each season and we chat with them and their coach. We will on a Zoom call all together to see if you're like what you're saying is, are they connecting the dots from what we're working on in training to game day? And I think it's incredibly important that a goalkeeper coach has that connection with the head coach in a club. If you work incredibly important, we put all of the curriculum into Google. Sorry.
Okay.
Did you guys hear me about the relationship with the head coach?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Super important that you have a relationship with the head coach, but they get all of our curriculum, so they know what we're working on week to week, and then they can add feedback if they choose. Absolutely. So in their training sessions. Hey, I know this week with CCAI you worked on solving pressure by backpedaling. I think there's a circumstance that you can try it. So yeah, it's really important and it is difficult. I mean, we work with a lot of different goalkeepers, but it's a challenge that our coaches have to figure out.
No, but it's awesome that you have that open communication because you have to. Like even when I was coaching club here, I don't anymore, but even when I was coaching club here, like I had that open communication. Like I can't get to every game. And, it would be the feedback from Kelly and everybody, like, this is how the goal broke down. And hopefully I'd see some video and stuff and even be on the same page and to educate the coach. Because a lot of times it's a field player coach that thinks the goal happened for one reason and you see you see it and you're like, no, that's not why. Yeah. Like, this is why. And, and actually have to educate them as well. But it's really important, I think, anybody watching and stuff, you have to make sure what you're coaching is translating. Because like I said, I can sit here and I can do we could do repetition situations over and over again and you're gonna get it. But if that one time comes up in the game and you don't do it, then it's not translating over. So it's like, great, I'm glad you did it in practice, but who cares at the end of the day because you're not doing it in the game. Right. And it's really important as goalkeeper coaches and everybody that we make sure that switch is on and kids are doing it.
Totally agree with you. And sometimes the reason why kids don't execute what they're working on in training isn't because they don't understand it, right? Like our kids understand how to solve pressure. Right. The reason why they're not doing it in a game is because they're scared, they're nervous, they're hesitating, they are fearful to make a mistake. And so sometimes it's not that they don't know what they're doing. It is an interference that is something else outside of what they know.
I totally agree. And then they go back to their bad habit. They go back to this weird bad habit that you've been working on to try to break because it's just out of fear. It's just
Yeah, and I think as coaches, we have to discern, is it that they don't know or is that they're afraid? And it's super important, at least when we're training, that we create an environment that is free to fail, like a culture of failure. Like we literally say to our kids when they walk in the door, today you're not going to be a 10 out of 10. Like I work with these kids. They're my favorite class. They're 10 years old, 10, 11, and 12. And every time they walk in, I go, you know, you're going to fail today. You're not going to be a 10 out of 10. And they're excited about that because they know that's when they're going to grow the most.
It's how you learn.
Yeah.
It's how you learn. And that's the same thing that goes back to me saying, stop being so safe. Like even at this highest level with UCLA and these kids that can go on to play pro and national team pool and stuff. I'm like, stop being safe. Like you're at practice. We're at practice. Like, let's see where we can go with this. Let's push this. I know you can do this. I know you can do that. But what more can you do? Be okay to fail. Be okay. Yeah. And I'll tell them, go with two hands and try to catch that ball. And if you, and hold on to it instead of just parrying it automatically. And if you don't, I'm okay with that because I know what you're doing. Like, I know that you're making the effort to say, I'm so used to parrying this ball. Oh my God, which drives me crazy. Parrying this ball. No, now I'm going to try to hold on to this. Because now you want to go to the next level. You just gave up a corner kick. You just gave up a rebound and stuff like that. But if I'm at practice and you want to get to the next level, then let's extend you and let's challenge you and let's get somewhere in the middle that you can actually save some of these balls and hold on to them. But don't play it safe, and allow them to fail. It's okay to fail.
I have a question for. Go ahead, Jill.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add on to that. Is like, in those circumstances, we manipulate the game rules, and so they have to try different things. So we'll say, like in your example of catch everything, we'll say, all right, well, we want them to work on holding things better or putting their rebounds in a good place. So we'll add a striker into the box inside the 6 so they can finish. And if they put the rebounds out in a good place, we'll say, okay, well, if you give up 3 corner kicks, that's a point for the attacking team.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah, so then we're putting the decision back in their hands, and we're saying, all right, well, you want to give up a rebound, that's fine, but it's got to be in a good area or else you're going to get punished. And so
absolutely.
They kind of figure out on their own, like, all right, I want to hold it, but if I try to hold too much and I go with 2 hands for too long, I can't extend my range. So we try to manipulate the games to help them with those like little detailed decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love what you're saying right there, because it was making me think in regards to the consequences. And Omar, I know you as a private coach, it's a little bit more difficult because a lot of times the problem, like Jill was talking about, is like the implementation into actual games. They start seeing training as different. Training with Omar is different than playing in a game. So training with you becomes theory or concept, but playing in the game becomes like, oh, well, now this is actually really happening. So I know that you this summer have really been trying to implement like those consequences in your training sessions. So they start understanding how this is realistic to what's going to happen to them in a game. And then those triggers, they start recognizing those triggers and and seeing the themes. And then they go, I've seen this before. Now I know what to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think we had Paul Rogers on the podcast, and he was telling me that, whenever he has situations where if, let's say, the last rep out of let's say 6 out of 6 reps, the last rep, he scores a goal through the goalkeeper's legs, he says, you know what, that's life. Move on. Next goalkeeper in. He's like, I don't allow them to say that the last rep has to be good. Once they, step into a game, that's the environment. That's kind of the harshness of the game. So I'm going to try and create that environment in my session. So, little things like that I could try and do with my goalkeepers. Again, I feel like I'm a nice guy. So the kids that I train, I always want to be on their good graces. I want to be on their good graces, and I always want to, show them respect. They show me respect. That's how it works. Then I kind of heard Paul Rogers and, certain other coaches who were saying, and I watched Chris Sharp too in his sessions, and the back and forth that he has with his players, you can tell there's respect, but also an expectation. So for me, every session that I've had now with either younger kids, older kids, college kids, the last rep, if you don't make the save, or if it's a bad goal, next person in. And sometimes they look at me like, well, I'm paying you to, they don't say it, but I can tell. Maybe it's just
I'm paying you to make me feel better.
My own insecurity of like, they're here to get better. So I'm like, you know what, next person go in. So they go in, and then like the next rep, you can see the sharpness, how much more intent they are to make sure that their last rep, or that they look good, amongst amongst their peers, or they give a bad rebound and they kind of just sit on the floor. I mean, even if I have to run all the way across the field, I'm running to go get it, taking a touch and putting it on frame. You know what I mean? So just like little things like that to try and create their as much of the perception of the game as possible. And just one thing also too that you guys were discussing is obviously how everything, should be game realistic. And that's kind of one thing as a private coach that I've been trying to do with, like, I don't usually have more than 3 or 4 kids in my groups because I try to keep them smaller for that reason. And it's just like understanding, okay, like this is the bigger play that I'm trying to accomplish today. So this past weekend I had, balls over the top into space. So, recovering from your 18 back to your angle. So once you recover back to your angle, you're probably going to be faced with a 1v1 or an angle, like, reaction shot. So I started.
Where'd you find a park with enough space to do that, by the way, Omar? I'd like to know.
I put it on the big board. I said, this is where the play is going to start, and then the ball's going to come into play. Just envision that we're playing on a bigger field. But, I'm just peeling everything back for them. So we start off with, stopping and starting. So, for example, they're recovering back to their line. I bounce the ball, and then that triggers them to step forward and close down the angle just a little bit. So just feeling out those little things. Then slowly but surely, I'm going, okay, now you're shifting from the middle of the goal to the angle, and now you're going to get a shot from like 4 to 6 yards. Make sure you're getting there, fast approach, slow arrival, set, balance, and you make a save. After that, now you're actually recovering from the 18 back to your line. And as that ball comes through, the ball's going to be bouncing. I'm either going to chest it, put it down, take it for a 1v1. So I'm just trying to make as much as I can with what I have. Like Joe said earlier in the podcast, of whatever you guys have, is try and make it and simulate it as much as you possibly can. And sometimes visually you can't accomplish that, but it's more like the verbal, like how you present it to them. This is what I want you to try and believe. In my opinion, that's how sometimes you can kind of, break down those barriers that you may have, obstacles that you may, come up against in your sessions.
I mean, like Jill said earlier, though, there is a time for technical work, period.
Totally, yeah.
And I know we always talk about that on the podcast, like game realistic, this, that, the other. But sometimes, there is time for, and I make sure, we also have to break that down as well, because if you don't have the technical side down, like all the other stuff it's gonna lag in a sense. And there is time, and I'm just saying that to anybody watching and everybody out there that, you got to get the technical stuff in too. It's okay to do footwork. Yeah. It's okay to do handling. It's okay to do all that, but once you start getting into movement and into a session, you want to integrate game realistic scenarios.
I have a question about that, Jill, in regards to TKI. And by the way, I want to give, one of the shout outs to you, Jill, is that, a couple of years ago when I first started watching TKI videos, it very much made me change my approach to how to develop a training session. And because I saw how, I don't want to say exciting the session was. I mean, you guys weren't flying through hoops and stuff like that, but you were, but it was.
Well, in California, you could skip the ball off the ocean and then just dive. Like, apparently, that's my favorite YouTube video of all.
But it was everyone was active, everyone was involved, everyone was invested. It wasn't just passive servers and stuff like that. And one thing it made me realize is one of the reasons that I think one of my strengths is that I was really good at playing training, so it got me on rosters because I looked really good. You were a training keeper. I was a training keeper. I was really good at training, and then what happened is I started just becoming those training sessions, and I knew the movements because everything was so repetitive. And obviously modern goalkeeping is so different than even just, 10, 15 years ago, how we were training. And when I got into the game, it was a completely different story. My mindset changed. And that's why I'm here with a microphone instead of playing today. But what was my theory? Oh yeah. So how do we make sure that we're still doing that isolation technical training, but still getting this game element? Because I agree with you, Saskia, but like, should that be just in the beginning with our introductory, warm-up, quote unquote, before we get into the game activity?
That's a really good question, and something that I'm still trying to investigate myself. I'm a recovering technician. When I played, I was a technician. That was my strongest part of my game. I was the best goalkeeper in small-sided because there was no decisions to be made. It was communicate, organize your back line, and there's no decisions. Do you have to protect the spacing behind the back line, or do I come out on a flank service? It's all shot stopping, close range, fast pace, organized. And that was my strong suit. And as soon as I got into games, I couldn't make decisions for myself because it didn't look like training. It didn't look like what I was seeing every day. But I knew that was what made me successful. And so when I started coaching, I was like, well, if being technical made me successful, that's how I'm going to teach my goalkeepers what they should do. And so I just beat a dead horse with the technique. And all of a sudden I was like, what the heck? Like I'm making all these like little robots that look like me when I played, but couldn't make any decisions on game days, you know? And I think that you have to have some like non-negotiable things, you know, set shape, and that's going to be different from everyone. But I think I realized that there's more flexibility in the game than I gave it credit for. And I thought everything had to be a certain way, had to be done a certain way. Like if I came out on that 1v1 to make it a 50-50, you should too. Even though maybe you're stronger at setting back and reacting to things, you know, and there's more flexibility in it. I think that there are certain aspects of the game that you have to teach technically, like how to come out and win a ball in a 50-50 situation. Kids are going to get hurt if you don't teach them the right way how to do that, right? Kids are going to get hurt if you don't teach them how to absorb pace. And so those things are important. But I do think that there are ways to integrate technique into your tactical session. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
No, I agree.
Certainly, yeah, certainly there are some times where you need to break things down super, super technical. Like if I just took a kid off the street and was like, all right, we're going to block today. And get in the goal and figure it out. That wouldn't work, right? If you put me on a black diamond with skis, I would not be able to figure that out, right? I would need to learn whatever, pizza, whatever they say. And that's dangerous, right?
But you mean like with the wedge?
Yeah,
With the wedge?
like yeah.
There are some parts of the game that you certainly have to break down. They're super technical for safety reasons, but also depending on like the learning abilities of your kids, you know, sometimes it takes kids a lot longer to learn something and you have to find different ways to figure it out. But like positioning, I'm going to just put that into every session. That's going to be a focus on every session. Like, you know, you don't have to break down every single little thing technically. Just give them movement solutions and let them explore different ways to do it.
I agree with you. I think for me, it's more integrated into the session as well, like technique. And again, I'm talking about a higher level. So, you know, but when I was making me think of what you said earlier, when I was doing club, and I'm like 2 months into like, you know, training these kids and everything, and we've gone through a progression, everything's great, and all of a sudden I got a kid coming over like, oh, Coach Melly told me to come over and try goalkeeping, and I'm like. Like awesome. The kid can't even catch, and we're working on breakaways right now or something because of the progression. And I'm sitting here trying to teach a kid how to catch, and I got 5 kids doing breakaways, and like I'm just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
See, that's one of the joys of coaching youth club is I especially at the younger ages when you get you're doing like a 9s or 10s group, and then all of a sudden some random like U9 just shows up and they're like, I don't know, well this kid's trying out to be a goalkeeper. He's coming from ASO, so we sent him over to goalkeeper training with you today. I'm like,
right. Or every once in a while they play in goal, so can you teach them some stuff?
Oh no, oh yeah, that's my guess. My goalkeeper's injured this weekend. So-and-so's going to come and learn goalkeeping for the week.
I'm like, no, don't send them to me. Just play field in goal. And if you want to catch the ball with your hands, it's fine. And kick it. No, I'm not teaching you goalkeeping in a day. It's not going to happen. Because I'm just going to muddle your brain. And, just keep the ball out of the net, kid.
Speaking of the positioning thing, Omar, I want to ask you this because, you know, obviously you post a lot of videos as you do, Jill, as well, too. But, a lot of times in the past, let's just say you maybe have run sessions in unrealistic areas to where the activities would actually take place in the game, whether there was a space utilization resource or whatever. And I know you've been trying to do a much more of a service of actually making sure that you're doing any sort of activity within a realistic area to when it's going to happen in the game. How much have you noticed a difference in regards to your goalkeepers' understanding of positioning now that you've been doing that?
I would say like most of the people who I do train, whenever I explain to them, or whenever, let's say we're not in the, I guess on an 18 or we don't have proper lines. One thing is I actually go to Home Depot a lot and I buy a lot of spray paint. So if you go to the park in Arcadia, you'll see a lot of like 18s being drawn out where the grass was good one week and then we ruined it. We moved over to the right a little bit more. So I'm always constantly drawing it out, trying to give them the best picture. But a lot of times when I have the kids that I train, prior to the session, I'll ask them, what do you guys want to work on? And they'll tell me. And then I'll, again, I have all my clips that I have on my YouTube stuff. And I'll send them the clips like, look, this is kind of what I'm looking for on the 1v1s tomorrow. This is what I'm going to try and set up. it's just a visual and understanding of what you can expect. So then they get the footage, they watch it, and then when they come to the training session, I'll ask them. Usually they show up one after the other, and I'll just say, hey, like, did you see the clip I sent you about De Gea on a 1v1? Like, oh yeah, I liked it when he came out. He was kind of wide, but he still was able to make a kick save. So those are the little discussions that we have. So now we have some terminology to build off of once we actually step into the session. And when we put it into the field, now they have a visual. So it doesn't have to necessarily be that the fields are drawn out and everything is perfectly set up. But now they have an idea and a visual based off the footage and based off our little conversations. And they can simulate and perceive it a certain way. And they have that muscle memory now in their head to have that mental recall whenever we have those little, moments where they get beat between the legs. And then we talk about, hey, what do you think? Remember when De Gea did that? Maybe you, in this situation, maybe you could drop your knee for a block save. So again, I try to give them as much of the perception of what the session is going to be like prior, so that my job is not as hard when I don't have those lines or when I don't have the proper, distance and dimensions and all that.
My only concern with that, playing devil's advocate, Omar, is in regards to showing the video, because I know Franz Hoek is very big on, you don't want to train an idea or a concept, and that's David De Gea, and this is a 12-year-old Johnny, and the demands of their games are very different. Like I'm trying to think of like the best way to put this in a non-negative standpoint, but how old can you do this with? Or, Saskia or Jill, like, do you feel like if you do this with like a 9, 10, 11-year-old, it's going to go over their heads, and they're going to be trying to do, because pros move differently than a 10-year-old does,
I mean, I agree with Franz, shocking, on that, in the sense of, I don't, this is Johnny. This isn't David De Gea, and the ball's not coming as hard. Whether he's playing in a regular size goal or not regular. There's so many different scenarios, and everything's a gray area. Yes, I understand that they understand maybe they understand the training that they're gonna, but I don't want them to emulate the keeper. In a sense, like, we have to find their way as a keeper. We have to find what, they can handle, what their strengths are and stuff. And I find that you get those kids that I've gotten into club that, yes, they watch a lot of other keepers and everything. And now I got kids that are, doing K saves from like 15 yards away because that's what they saw. And I'm just like, really? I'm like, you're not even close enough to the ball, or parrying everything. And I'm just like, why? Because that's what they see. And I'm just like, but that's not the situation. And I didn't kick the ball that hard. Like, catch it, it's like, and so it's, yes, I think watching it is, yes, obviously watching soccer is amazing. I'm never going to say no to that, but everybody has to find their own way in their own place. You can't say, this is who I want to be. I'm going to play just like them. You have to play like you, and we're going to find the best version of you, period.
Yeah. And I know, and Jill, I know you got to wrap up right here, so we're going to get to you right now. But Omar, I just want you to know, by the way, that this is not a negative on your statement here. I understand what Omar's saying, but I would say my only thing would be like, this is the session we're going to have, but this isn't who I want you to be, in a sense.
I would just say, most of the time too, like, when you guys tell me these things, I don't take offense to it. It's not even, it wasn't
I know.
Even,
I text you after. Text you after. I'm like, I'm sorry, you mad at me?
No. Like, well, Mike,
I don't want to make you look like in a bad light with Jill here. I mean, come on.
No, I mean, I know Jill too. Like, I mean, I train mostly older kids, so that's. I guess maybe I should have prefaced it with that. Is most of my film review is to the older kids, and any film review that I send to the younger ones is of them doing exercises. But mainly like the college kids and like the probably like later high school senior year kind of kids. I'll send them that footage and I'll say, hey, like, or did you watch the footage that I just released on my Instagram channel? Did you see that? Or did you see my YouTube video of one of the goalkeepers? And some of the kids,
must be nice to be able to plug your content to your clients.
They bring it up to me like, hey, I saw I posted one I posted one last week of the Minnesota United goalkeeper Dane St. Clair. And he didn't make a save, but he's like moving powerfully, just to this shifting movements across the goal. And then like two of the kids who came to the session were like, hey, so when Dane St. Clair is moving around the goal and, doing this, he didn't make a save, but that's what I want to look like today. So can you put me through session where I'm going to move consistently, back and forth? I want to show you that I have good balance. So just like those kind of little things where like, I don't know, some people may not have even noticed that like before you make a save, you actually have to perform a movement. Like you said, Mike, a lot of kids are like, training goalkeepers. They'll show up to training and not really understand the concepts of like why you're trying to do that. Which again, why like I like Jill's setup where like the kids know exactly the potential outcomes and what you're trying to work on. So things are layered, but at the same time, it's digestible for them so they can walk out of training and go, oh my God, I worked on stability today. I worked on 1v1s. I worked on moving quick, but not being, out of sorts. So all those little things are super important to verbalize so the kids have an idea of how they can see it within the session. And then hopefully, potentially over time, they can feel that they're making progress with those little things.
Yeah. Jill, I know you need to head out of here. So anything you want to wrap up with before we give you a fantastic plug for TKI and for everybody to check out all your content?
No, I just want to piggyback what Omar said is like what he's doing is something that not everyone is doing. Not everyone is taking the time to show their kids film before they're training. And that is so important. It's for kids to, so I could say to you, Mike, all right, I want you to paint the water lilies by Picasso. And if you've never seen the water lilies, how the heck are you supposed to do that, right? But if you've seen it, you've got an idea of like, okay, well, we'll start with this and we'll go to that,
Right.
And I think that it's important when showing video to kids that you ask questions like, how does what that goalkeeper did relate to your strengths? Or how does that relate to your game specifically? Would you make the same decision? Or, hey, can you identify one thing that goalkeeper did well in this sequence and how that relates to our intended outcome today? And I think it's really critical that you don't say, I'm going to set the scenario and I want you to solve the problem the exact way De Gea did. It is, I'm going to set the scene, I'm going to set the scenario, and what are some different solutions that you can come up with, and explore those solutions today in training.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really succinct way to put it, and I love the fact that you brought up that a lot of the coaches don't do that, and I think a lot of it is because the fact is that I've tried to bring up video a lot of times, especially with the younger goalkeepers, Omar, and I think I should also preface that as well too. Is that it's been a mistake that I've made in the past is that I've shown video of, I'm just going to use David De Gea for an example right now, not trying to harp on David De Gea, but David De Gea, to a 10-year-old.
Good right now, aren't I?
Yeah, to be as a 10-year-old or whatever, and then they go out there and then they're trying to be David De Gea as opposed to being, themselves. And so I think it's just in how you approach showing them the video and why you're showing them the video. And what do you want them to watch in that video and the things like that? So I've been trying to do a better job of that. With that being said, Jill, I know you got to get out of here. You got a big celebration you got to get to. So
what's the celebration?
It's Maria's dad's birthday, so I'm currently in the basement of their home while they're upstairs celebrating.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, I need to get some cake.
South Jersey partying is something else. I have done that.
That's a whole.
Hey, I told you I had to explain it. I'm Central Jersey. Sorry.
By the way, what's the whole thing with this Wawa sandwich thing? There's a gas station.
The Wawa's the best, man.
People from our area, we just can't explain it. If you don't know, then we can't. You'll never understand.
It's just. Damn, now I really miss Jersey.
Gas stations and sandwiches. I've never thought
it's
that would be a
gas
combination.
Station sandwiches. Not like they're. I can't. I'll talk to you about it later. Damn, man. All right.
Oh my gosh. All right, Jill. If anybody wants to connect with you, I know how active you are. Actually, all of you at TKI are. A shout out to everybody at TKI. Just because we have Jill on right now does not mean that we don't recognize everybody who puts in all the hard work at TKI. You all have been absolutely fantastic. Where's the best place for people to connect with you personally, though?
I just started my own Instagram, so I'm pretty sure TK Coach Jill, I think.
See, I'm not that bad, Mike.
I just started it, to be fair. Let me check. Yeah, or you can send me an email at jloyden@thekeeperinstitute.com, or just follow us at the Keeper Institute. But yeah, awesome. TK Coach Jill, that's my handle.
Cool. I'll
Boom.
be sending my resume over.
You guys, thank you so much for having us on. And if you ever want to connect with any of our other coaches, they have amazing, amazing stuff as well. Coach Chris is bringing it with all the mental stuff, and Tori with the strength and conditioning. So they're a huge part of what we do, and we would not be who we are without everybody's help. And
hey, Jill, keep doing what you're doing, man. It's awesome. It's
thanks. I
absolutely
appreciate
awesome.
you guys. Appreciate you guys.
100%.
It's so awesome. And you can reach out to Omar Zini at ProGK Academy _ Saskia Weber on all social media platforms at Saskia_Weber, at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media. Contact at inside the 18 number 18media.com for guest suggestion or topic suggestion. Shout out to everybody who says, why don't you guys have TKI on all the time? And Jill's been a little busy. She's had a busy summer with a lot going on. Even a little guy that's made it a lot going on right there. So,
all right.
Oh my gosh. All right, guys, that is all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out later.